right, welcome to You,
Me,
and TV. I'm Mike.
I'm Gia.
And today we're going to be talking about the first episode of Stranger Things.
Stranger Things was created, written, and directed by the Duffer Brothers. Season 1 premiered on July 15th, 2016, and this is a Netflix original.
Season 3 premieres on July 4th, 2019, but we're going to be talking about the very first episode of Season 1, which is titled Chapter 1, The Vanishing of Will Byers. All right, we're going to start it off by reading the Netflix description. So here's the Netflix description. When a young boy vanishes, a small town uncovers a mystery involving secret experiments, terrifying supernatural forces, and one strange little girl. What do we think about that Netflix description, Gia?
A little spoilery.
A little bit, it's letting us know, hey, there's a kid missing and, it might be monsters or something. See, when I see a kid missing, I want to know that it's probably the weird dude in town.
Yeah.
Or at least I want there to be like 6 or 7 weird dude suspects.
Right,
Not
yeah.
6 or 7 weird dudes and also like a monster.
Yeah, because if there's a monster, it's probably the monster.
It's probably the monster.
Yeah.
Unless it's a friendly monster.
Oh, that's true.
You never know. Mm-hmm. I'll spoil this a little bit. I don't think it's a friendly monster.
Probably not.
So, hey, we're going to be talking about Stranger Things here. Hey, before we get too far into it, we're just talking about Season 1, Episode 1. If you've listened to us before, thanks for coming back. If you've never listened to this podcast, though, we talk a little bit about you and me. That's each other. That's the
Yes.
hosts, Mike and Gia. But we also talk about the first episode of a TV show. We get pretty deep into it, but sometimes we veer off in different directions about different things.
We veer into it off a lot.
We
onto
really
a lot
do.
Of different tangents.
Yeah, but if you're looking for like a serious recap of like the first 2 seasons of Stranger Things as you get hyped for the 3rd season, this isn't it. This is more like if you just like you watch the first episode again or for the first time and you just want to talk about it with some good friends, but you don't have any good friends to talk about it. Well, spoiler alert, you do now. You like that?
That was nice.
Anyway, let's get into this. So we mentioned this is by the Duffer Brothers. That's a fun way to bill who you are, just
Yeah, it's like branding yourself,
I guess
like
so.
giving yourself a brand.
The Duffer Brothers. What are their first names?
Matt and Ross.
And they're twins.
They're twins.
Identical twins? Do we know?
I don't know.
Oh man, twins. That's cool. They began making films together in 3rd grade after their parents gave them a video camera as a gift. And, hold on. Let's just stop for a second because, not stop the podcast, but stop for a second. They got video cameras as a present when they were in 3rd grade. These guys are like our age, I think it said. They were born in like 84, so they're 2 years younger. Or 2 years older
than us.
I got that confused another time too when we were trying to do math.
You're not great with math.
But I did not get a video camera as a present in 3rd grade. I don't think we had a
Me
computer
neither.
till maybe a couple years after that. I don't know. I'm just whenever they have these people and they show like Steven Spielberg when he has a camera when he's like a little child making movies, it's like what? Who's getting a camera when they're that young?
Yeah, but now everybody has a camera.
Well, I'm led to believe everybody's going to become a famous filmmaker
probably
now.
or a YouTube star.
Oh, okay.
That's their plan.
Jeez, going out there just putting out content about themselves, thinking that people will want to listen.
Who does that?
I don't know, right? No, but the Duffer Brothers. They work as a team in film, TV, as writers, directors, and producers. They kind of got their start, or at least their big break, in a way, with a movie in 2015 as a psychological thriller called Hidden, which we have not seen that movie.
No, it was kind of a limited release. It wasn't like a big movie.
I think it was even sent to on demand. I was reading an article. It was an interview with the two of the Duffer Brothers, and they talked about how they were so psyched they got this big deal with Warner Brothers, and they said like, about 3 weeks into the whole process, we realized that things weren't really going as planned, and they got like questions from the studio, like, so this whole thing takes place in one room, because I guess the whole movie is set in like a bomb shelter, which actually sounds like exactly the kind of movie I would definitely want to see.
Yeah, it does. It also kind of sounds like that one movie we saw that was like a Cloverfield movie, but it's like. Not Cloverfield.
13 Cloverfield Lane?
Yeah,
maybe a little bit, yeah, because that's in bomb shelter kind of thing. And there's
and Blast from the Past.
You know what? It sounds exactly like Blast from the Past. Well, speaking of that, though, it also stars a hottie. Blast from the Past stars what's his name? Brendan Fraser. And Brendan Fraser?
I think it's Fraser.
Well, Fraser's another hottie.
Brazier, Dairy Queen.
Brazier burgers from Dairy Queen. But this stars Alexander Skarsgård
Yeah,
from Big Little Lies, which we
hottie
covered a
from
couple
Big
weeks
Little
ago.
Lies.
Yeah, hottie, no flaws in him.
Nope.
And anyway, though, that movie was not super successful.
No, and
but
I was trying to figure out if it was good or not, and there were only like 3 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. So
well, it's on
hard
Amazon to rent for
say.
99 cents, so we'll have to check that out sometime. But M. Night Shyamalan, of all people, read the script. He somehow came across it, saw the script, liked it, and the Duffer Brothers said something like, "Oh my gosh, we wrote this with you as like an inspiration."
Ooh.
And then you read and liked it, and that's perfect.
That's the twist.
That's the twist. And they actually got hired on to the show Wayward Pines, which M. Night Shyamalan produced and directed. I think the pilot, maybe, I'm not sure, but he worked on it. He was a producer on it.
That was a pretty cool show. We watched that.
Yeah, it's based on a book series, and there were 2 seasons that aired on Fox. And the first season we watched, and we really liked it a lot. It was a really cool show, and it's streaming on Hulu. So check out Wayward Pines. It stars Matt Dillon. You gotta love some Matt Dillon.
Yeah.
And Matt Dillon of You, Me, and Dupree, which is of course our namesake. So
What he's best known for.
I would say so. But anyway, so I know that when we were seeing that this show Stranger Things was coming out, and I saw it was from the Duffer Brothers, I immediately recognized their name because they were in the opening credits of so many episodes of Wayward Pines. I guess they were just writers on it, maybe directors too, I'm not sure, but I thought they created it because when you see like a name like that, like the Duffer Brothers, it's like, well, they're obviously the ones who are in charge here. Like that's because you don't bill yourself like that if you're not the people in charge. Even the Duplass brothers, Mark and Jay Duplass, I think they don't. I don't think they build themselves as the Duplass brothers. I don't think it says directed by the Well, I don't know if they both do the directing and whatnot. Anyway, those teams of brothers that make movies and stuff like that, always good stuff. Yeah. So anyway, should we just get into this show?
Let's get into it because there's a lot to talk about in this show.
There really is.
Lots happening.
We're taking it back to the 80s, guys.
Yeah.
Kicking it old school here. So this opens up, and there's some text on the screen that says November 6th, 1983, Hawkins, Indiana. And you were saying it's like the kind of font if you were reading a novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it appears over the night sky. There's crickets chirping, and it pans down to a large laboratory building. Ooh. And on the screen again, it says Hawkins National Laboratory, U.S. Department of Energy. Seems pretty normal, pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Nothing shady
Something
going
you would
on.
see in any town,
well, I guess we
well,
don't have a secret government building here in this town. In some towns.
Yeah.
That's true, I guess. And we see inside of the building in the next shot, there's lights flickering, alarm is blaring, and a scientist is running down the hallway, seemingly being chased. He looks up, hears a creepy noise, and is violently pulled up into the air he runs into an elevator.
Yeah.
And then he's pulled up in the air as the elevator doors shut.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's intense.
That seems scary. That seemed like supernatural forces possibly going on, like were mentioned in that Netflix description.
Oh, yes.
The way you got pulled up like that.
I believe so. And but then it just cuts, a little juxtaposition here. That's intense, crazy, but then we get a cut just to the suburbs here.
Yeah, it cuts to like a sprinkler popping up in like a suburban lawn.
Right, yeah. Now, we had some issues with that, though, because we're going to veer off into some different directions
I've
here.
got an issue with this.
Well, let's just say, before we get into that issue with that, we've only seen season 1 of Stranger Things. We started to watch the second season, just didn't feel like it was for us anymore, but we really, really loved the first season when we watched it.
Yeah, and we like binged it the weekend it came out.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It was one of the first shows we ever binged.
It definitely was,
the whole
yeah.
season dropped all at once, and I had never even heard about it. I didn't know it was coming out, and then we saw that it like pop up on Netflix, and it was like, oh, that looks really cool, and we were immediately hooked.
We were, yeah. It came out July 15th, which is one day before our anniversary, and I think that was maybe a Friday, probably, because I remember like watching like 2 or 3 episodes just like that night. I was like, oh my gosh, and it got like real dark, and we were like still up, like, oh, let's watch one more, because I think the next day we went down to Athens, Ohio, where Ohio University is, just to spend the day for our anniversary.
Because that's where we met.
Aw. And then we saw the Ghostbusters movie in a drive-in theater on the way home, and then just to, make up for that kind of not being great, we watched a couple more episodes of Stranger Things when we got home.
Yeah,
and then we finished it off on Sunday. Oh, man. It was a good weekend.
Weekends.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
But so, we do like the show. But, watching it again, it's like, wait a second. Why are they watering their lawn in November in Indiana? We live in Ohio.
Yeah.
I definitely stopped watering my lawn by August, September, maybe. I guess it depends, but I'm definitely not watering my lawn at nighttime in November.
It's like,
that's a little weird.
I feel like this is something that happens a lot in TV or in movies. Like, often they want to set things in the Midwest, like in the suburbs. But it's kind of like people in Hollywood who are making these things don't really know what the Midwest is like at all with regards to weather specifically.
Oh man, those kids are riding around on bikes and they're just in little light jackets.
Yeah, and
it's
and
November,
they're not even zipped up.
Yeah.
At one point, a character will walk outside topless, like it's
topless,
shirtless. It's a man. He walks outside shirtless, but it's no big deal, and he would be freezing.
Well, he's a very tough man. I think that was established in his little opening shot.
All right, I'm just saying, not realistic for November in the Midwest.
What about the scene where the whole family is eating breakfast together and it's like really light outside?
Oh yeah, and in November, like eating breakfast before school.
Yeah,
it would be very dark outside.
Not a thing, guys. Not a thing. So
anyway.
Yeah, but that sprinkler popping up in this next shot, that's what we took issue with there. But then we cut to there's a basement. We got 4 boys playing Dungeons and Dragons down in that basement there. We've got Mike Wheeler, which is played by Finn Wolfhard. We've got Dustin Henderson, which is played by Gaten Matarazzo. I did not know he had such an Italian-sounding name.
Yeah, who I think was like the breakout star for me.
Oh yeah,
he's
funny.
He's adorable and funny.
Yeah, he is.
These are little kids, by the way.
Yeah, you got Lucas Sinclair, played by Caleb McLaughlin, and you got Will Byers, played by Noah Schnapp, and Mike Wheeler. Mike is kind of like your main guy right there. And I've said it before on the podcast too. I love it when you got a main character named Mike, because my name is Mike as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's what I like. Always like the Eric Foreman, because they're at his basement.
In the basement.
Oh yeah,
and they're in a circle because they're playing the game.
Oh yeah. Well, they're not doing what they were doing on that 70s show though. Hopefully, 80s a little bit different. I'm sure they were doing that in the 80s too. Not these kids though, because they're children.
These seem like good little boys.
Youths. Playing some D&D though down there, and Dustin points out as they're playing, he says, as things are getting, I don't know how to explain what's going on in Dungeons and Dragons, but he says, what if it's the Demogorgon? We're so screwed if it's the Demogorgon.
Yeah, we are not at all familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, but I looked up Demogorgon, and apparently that's what it's from, so that's what they're playing.
There you go.
Yes.
And that'll be kind of important later, because this monster that will appear, they sort of, hint that it's this Demogorgon, or that's what they call it.
Yeah, at least a Demogorgon-like.
It's very Demogorgon-like. But anyway, Mike's mom tells the kids it's time to go home. As they leave, Will tells Mike, it was the Demogorgon that got me. See you tomorrow. And the boys jump on their bikes. They all head toward their respective homes alone. And you were talking about how that's sort of like a TV trope.
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with TV tropes, there's actually a website, tvtropes.com.
And it has like everything. Let me tell you what, real quick. One time I was looking up the TV show Yo Yogi, which lasted for like half a season in the early 90s, and it was an animated show about Yogi the bear, but they were teenagers and they hung out at the mall, and it had all this stuff about all the TV tropes in that show. And I was like, what? Because I was looking to see if that show existed anywhere online, and because I couldn't really find it. Anyway, it has even obscure things.
Yeah,
is my point.
Yeah. It's like a pretty robust online encyclopedia of common themes from TV shows. So it'll have like the theme or the trope, and then it'll kind of explain that and like give you several examples of it being used in TV and sometimes in films. But so one of the tropes that you can find on there is called free-range children.
Free-range chicken?
No, free-range children, which is where, and this I think is especially common in movies that are set in like the 80s or the 70s, where you got kids just kind of running off on their own all day, like outside, not much supervision, like maybe the movie Stand By Me or The Sandlot or anything where you've just got kids hanging out all day.
Yeah.
No one's really paying attention. Nobody's too concerned about them doing that, about their safety.
And what does that lead to?
Well, it often leads to another TV trope, which is the missing child.
Ah, jeez.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so that's a little spoilery, but also that Netflix description spoiled it for us from the beginning. So
free range children. Yeah, we'll talk in a little bit, I think, about some other shows that have this same kind of opening. We'll get into that as they start to discover that there's a missing child, but he's not missing yet.
No.
So we got some 80s background music going on too. I like the music in this show. Fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
And the next part we see Will Byers, one of the kids. He's on his way home. He's kind of more alone. They've all kind of veered off in different directions. And he crashes his bike as he appears to be chased by something. And he's off. It's dark. It's kind of a quiet road or whatever.
Yeah, it kind of seems to be like sort of in the woods.
Yeah. And when he gets home, which his home feels like it's like in the woods almost too. It's very nestled back in there.
It seems like it's kind of isolated.
Right. And when he gets home, there's nobody home. And he starts to hear he's running kind of all over the house because he's being like chased by something. There's this static crackling noises and things
he's
like that.
Calling for his mom and for his brother.
Right.
And nobody's answering. Nobody appears to be home.
Yeah.
I think the dog's like barking kind of wildly, right?
It might be. Yeah. He's definitely barking later on too. But Will goes into like this shed and he grabs a gun that's in there. He loads it. He kind of looks up. There's like a shot of the light bulb kind of flickering, and then it goes out, and then when you see kind of the whole shed in there, and Will has disappeared, as the title said, the disappearance of Will Byers, or vanishing. Vanishing?
Vanishing.
He kind of vanishes though too.
He
He's
does.
almost just, because it's like, where did he go? He he did vanish.
Yeah, and I think for like a quick shot there, we do see some looks like some kind of creature.
Looks like a creature
walking by the door.
Yeah,
right?
or toward him from the woods or something like that. A little spooky. And then from that point, we've got the opening sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that opening sequence, very cool. I remember when we were watching this with all the lights off in our apartment, just, it's like... Yeah,
and again, and again, it kind of does look like an adventure novel, like the cover of like an adventure or sci-fi novel, kind of the 1970s or 80s, I would say. Yeah,
and you kind of see sort of the opening credits are, over, it's like a close-up of the title logo, Stranger Things, that you're talking about. I found
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say each episode starts with like chapter 1 or chapter 2 or chapter 3, like that pops up on the screen, so it is like a novel. Yeah,
and I found a quote. There's an interview with the Duffer Brothers, and Ross Duffer was talking a little bit about that font and that style of the Stranger Things logo and some of the posters and things like that they had up. And he said, I don't know what it is, but it obviously brings you back. It's weird because the font was one of the first things when we sold the show to Netflix and we were pitching it around to companies. We made a little lookbook, and in the front cover we made it look like an old Stephen King book, and we had very similar font in this red and the outline red, and there was like a bike that was just on the ground that was lost. And so that font was something they were thinking about from the beginning to help them to
really
set the tone.
And I think it's like 100% true. Like that kind of sold me on the show right away too. It's that font and
I know.
And that 80s music we were talking about, and also just how the whole show looks. I mean, it is very reminiscent of like E.T. or other movies or shows from that time period.
Especially too, because the show is like focused on kids, but it is scary, and it is like for adults as well. Although watching it back, it does feel more like a kid's thing than anything else. Yeah. But it's definitely, there's the adult part of it and all that kind of stuff too, where it's like, it's kind of intense. It's for everyone, but it's, it's intense. But it's also got the nostalgia factor going for it. So that is always a plus for me. Yeah. Yeah. Although I wish, I I would like something set in the 90s, maybe.
Yeah, because we were born in the 80s.
We were born in the 80s. I don't remember any of this.
But we were still like watching things from the 80s.
Yeah,
because there just wasn't as much to watch.
There wasn't a lot of stuff.
Then,
a lot of the cartoons we watched growing up.
From the 80s.
Right. Although I want something more from the 90s. Little more upbeat, little fun, little Sugar Ray in the background. That's what I want. I want that same style of making music to the time period, but I want it to sound like Sugar Ray. That's my 90s band. I'm going mid to late 90s. That's probably a questionable choice. We'll get some feedback on that.
I like Sugar Ray.
Oh, no, I like Sugar Ray, too. I'm just not saying... I'm saying they're just not probably the sound of the 90s.
They're not peak 90s, no.
They were not, no. I just want to rewatch this now with Sugar Ray music playing in the background. Watch the opening scene. I bet it's a lot more lighthearted.
Yeah.
Change it to Comic Sans font. No, that's... Anyway, after that opening sequence, like you said, it does say Chapter 1, The Vanishing of Will Byers. I love it. We see... it's Hopper, detective, police chief, Hopper, played by David Harbour, and we see his house, the inside of his house. Well, we don't know it's him yet, but we'll see him in a minute. But there's a children's drawing of a family on the wall. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did not.
What I did notice is there's definitely no family in this house.
Oh, yeah.
It is just
Seems
a dude.
to be like a bachelor pad.
Yeah, there's beer cans all over.
Not in a fancy way,
it's
in kind of
a
more
mess.
of a sad way.
Yeah, definitely a sad way. He's also sleeping on the couch too, but there's nobody else in that house.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe the bed is too messy. I don't know. Or maybe probably just fell asleep on the couch. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
So we see him. He does go outside shirtless. That's the part where he goes outside shirtless, and
there were like beer cans all over the house. It kind of looks like a mess. So that might be another reason why he fell asleep on the couch.
That's
maybe
true.
a lot of drinking.
I think he takes a couple pills and washes them down with some beer, and then he like takes a little drag on a cigarette there and blows smoke all over as he's getting ready in the morning, looking in the mirror, and he puts on his police uniform. So that's our lead hero. I'm sure that's a trope. There's a trope name for all that too.
I'm sure there is.
The hero
There's
cop.
a trope for just about everything.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But then we see back to back to Will's house.
Yeah,
Will Byers, the missing kid.
It's daytime.
morning.
It's
morning.
Not as terrifying.
We see
there.
Yeah. And we see his mom, Joyce, played by Winona Ryder. I always get the Winonas mixed up. Winona Ryder.
Judd?
Yes. Winona Judd is the country musician.
Yes.
Is she also
daughter of Naomi?
Do they
Judd?
also act too?
Ashley Judd does, and Ashley
is Ashley Judd related to them?
Yeah, Ashley Judd is Winona Judd's sister, and Naomi Judd is the mom of both of them.
And one of them is a kleptomaniac?
That's Winona Ryder.
Is that the right word for it?
Yeah.
That word sounds crazy. I mean,
I think so.
Like, that's where they like to steal stuff?
Yeah, there's a new Netflix show about that.
About Winona Ryder stealing stuff?
No. About people who are kleptomaniacs.
Trinkets?
Yeah, trinkets.
Trinkets.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun to say.
Yeah.
I have not watched that. Does not look like it appeals to me at all.
No.
So, anyway, Winona Ryder is the mother, and then there's also Will's brother. I don't know the actor's name who plays that. I might have it on this list of actors in front of me, but Charlie Heaton playing Jonathan Byers. And that guy kind of gives me a what's the guy's name? The guy from Daryl from The Walking Dead. Oh man, what the heck is that guy's name? You know what I'm talking about though. He's the cool one from The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
He gives me that kind of vibe.
The brother does?
Yeah. Gives me that kind of vibe a little bit.
The brother gave me more of a Matthew Lawrence vibe.
Because of the hair?
I think because of the hair.
You're talking Brotherly Love era Matthew Lawrence?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Not Boy Meets World era Matthew Lawrence?
No.
Boy Meets World era Matthew Lawrence. Do not get me started on those Lawrence brothers. My God. Anyway, but so we've got, the brother and the mom are like getting ready for the morning, and the mom's like, hey, have you seen Will? Have you woken him up yet? And then also, the brother had picked up some extra shifts at work the previous night, and the mom works late.
Yeah,
you know,
so
you got to make ends meet.
There the night before.
And, so nobody has seen Will since they don't even know if he's there. And you know what? They check his room, and he is not. He's not there.
Yeah, and the mom is kind of hard on the older brother about how he wasn't there and doesn't know if Will came home.
And he was just trying to help out. He was just trying to make some extra money.
Yeah. And I mean, he's a teenager, but he's also a child, and it just kind of seems like she should know whether her child came home last night.
That's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she clearly has got a lot on her plate.
Got a lot on her plate.
What other things should be making sure that your child is home?
Well, but free range children. I mean, he was out playing Dungeons and Dragons till God knows when the previous night.
This is something I listened to the podcast My Favorite Murder. I think a lot of people do. Most people do. But I feel like they talk about this a lot on there. Is like the 80s were like right before kids became special. I think that's they had that conversation a lot. Like now it's like kids are really special and you have to like take care of them and spend all your time taking care of them and worrying about them and knowing where they are. And like the 70s and 80s, it was like getting close to that, but they hadn't quite figured out that you have got to watch kids all the time.
And thus, all the missing kids.
All the missing kids, all the faces on the
Should we just
curtain.
let our kids just kind of wander?
No, we should
not.
Nope.
I want them to have adventures.
No.
Yeah.
You can have indoor adventures.
Well, all right. So anyway, there's no sign of Will. Anyway, the next scene, we see the school now. So now we're seeing kind of all the different places where people, may or may not. Well, we will be seeing all the different places where people are wondering where Will's at.
She's thinking maybe he got up and went to school early.
People do that.
Reason.
People do that.
It's possible.
Yeah. So we see Hawkins Middle School. There's still no sign of Will. We've got the three other kids, Lucas and gosh, I don't even remember all their names, but Lucas, Mike, and the other one, the one that you, Dustin, is that it? Dustin, yes. Lucas, Mike, and Dustin. And we see them at Hawkins Middle School there, and everybody's showing up in the morning. Now, they do run into some bullies that we only see in this first little bit here, but I kind of like what this show does, where it plants all these little seeds for things we're going to see later on, because I believe those bullies show up later. I'm pretty sure I remember a scene with them in 11, and I don't want to spoil anything. We'll spoil the first episode, but I don't want to spoil much of the rest of the season necessarily, in case you haven't seen it before. But those bullies will come back, but they call the kids names there, and I thought their names were kind of interesting because they're like, oh, you guys are a bunch of freaks, whatever, even though all these kids, look like awkward middle schoolers.
Yeah, it's not like these bullies don't look like awkward middle schoolers.
But they call the kid Lucas, who is African American, they call him Midnight, which is racist. Yeah, guys, not cool. Not cool. They call the other kid Mike Frogface, which actually is kind of fitting. He does have a frog look to him, but
he does, kind of like a tree frog.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But it's still not the nicest thing to call somebody. It is not.
And then they call the other kid Toothless, which actually he has he even says it in the thing. I forget what it's called. It's like clinodential dysplasia, something like that, which is a real thing that he has, and he's like been sort of I don't know about a spokesperson for it. He's been like an advocate for that, for getting it out there.
The actor has?
Yeah, he really does. Yeah.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. And
good for him. That's great.
Yeah. And so
oh, back to just real quick while we're talking about what these kids look like. So the one that they called frog face Mike, I wasn't thinking he looks like a frog. What I was thinking was he looks like Will, the kid who goes missing. Like,
it is a little confusing. Yeah,
those two actors playing those two kids look very similar, and it kind of made it hard for me to follow this episode the first time around.
Yeah, the first time we watched it, we thought they were the same person.
Kid's missing, but there's a kid.
There he is right there. Yeah. I don't know if we weren't paying close enough attention. We weren't ready for this kind of show. I don't know. But they look a lot alike. Or it could be like, is this intentional? Like, is there something going on here? Are they secret twins? Who knows? Yeah. No, they're not. But it threw us off a little bit.
Yeah, it did.
So, because really the other kid, Will Byers, we only see him briefly, and then he'll show up a little bit throughout, but it's not like I really
we don't get to know him too
we don't really get to know him.
He vanished.
He's gone. He has vanished. He's vanished now. Next we see...
He's vanished to me.
Vanished to me. You're vanished to me. That's a little reference to the last week's episode, which was for the show Dead to Me, which you can listen to, and you can watch Dead to Me on Netflix. Anyway, next we see Barb and Nancy. Barb, played by I don't know if I even have that in my list here. I hope I do. Barb is Barb played by Shannon Purser. Shannon Purser.
I think she was the breakout star for a lot of people.
She became like sort of
her character was the breakout character.
Yeah, she became kind of like a meme, kind of like people were really, because Barb
something happens to Barb,
guys.
We won't get into it, but
I remember when we watched that though too. I was like, she'll be. I don't want to give too much away, but I was like,
people weren't happy about it. People were very concerned, and with good reason.
Yeah,
there's no justice for Barb.
Well, not when it comes to monsters.
Yeah, unless I don't know, maybe she gets justice in later seasons that we haven't watched.
Does.
I don't know.
I feel like we would have heard. People
we probably would
love Barb.
Although, here's another thing about Stranger Things. I think they waited a little too long to come out with their second season.
Well,
because by the time it rolled around, like, we were kind of like, oh, I'm over
it was like almost
now.
2 years later.
Yeah.
That's how, that show Dark on Netflix, which, hey, let's just talk about some of these other shows too.
Shows with the missing
child trope, because they always have that. It's probably a similar trope too of the where we start to see the different parts of town and people are wondering if the person has shown up. So one of them, I'll just bring it up now, is Dark on Netflix, which we watched season 1.
And it's like a German? Is it German?
I believe it's German, yeah. And the first season, if you have not watched Dark, now is the time to jump in, or maybe wait till season 3 comes out in like another year or 2 or whatever, because we watched the first season and loved it, but it's very confusing.
Very confusing.
And the second season just came out like a year and a half to almost 2 years later, and it's like, I don't remember enough about this to watch it, and I don't want to rewatch it. Anyway, that made me think of that. But Dark is another show where a child goes missing in the first episode.
Everybody's like just kind of slowly like, hey, have you seen this kid? Where's this kid? Did they just leave for school early? What are they doing? Did they spend the night at a friend's house? So like the same stuff that's happening in Stranger Things happens.
Although where that kid goes, man, I don't want to give anything away, because it's like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. But then a few episodes later, it's like, wait a second, what?
It's confusing.
It's pretty wild. But that's one of them. More recently too, we watched True Detective season 3. That does that. That's a cool one. That's one where they really, there's a lot, kind of playing the seeds of different suspects and things like that. Twin Peaks, probably the most classic
that way.
of
Although
those.
We found out pretty quickly that Laura Palmer, we find her pretty quickly.
I think they find her in the beginning, but then people start to, they come around to the school and things like that. Man, that's a good one.
Grace Point.
Grace Point, which was the American version of Broadchurch, which we've seen.
I've heard that Broadchurch is good. I thought Grace Point was terrible.
It was pretty lame.
And I know it stars the same actor playing the detective in Grace Point and Broadchurch.
David Tennant,
I wasn't impressed with him, but maybe in...
Well, I think it's just the show. The ending was like, what?
Everything about the show I disliked, but...
Well, I'll tell you, I tried to watch the British version, and here's my issue. Anytime I'm watching a British thing that deals with police and things like that, it's too weird and different. I don't get it. Don't get me started on when they got judges, because they still wear wigs in the judges.
Understand the legal system of a different country. It does make things. It adds another element of confusion.
Right. If you can think of another show that uses this kind of thing with a missing kid, let us know.
Yeah.
Send us a message on Instagram or something like that. We love those kinds of shows.
Yeah.
They're very exciting. I think that's all I can think of.
Yeah,
oh yeah.
We always do.
Right. Yeah. And if
the OA is kind of, is it that they find somebody who's been missing?
They find someone who's been missing toward the beginning.
Okay.
That's a little bit different. That's a missing person who reappears. That's the opposite, actually.
That's kind of another trope. I can think of a few shows where that happens too, but we won't get into it.
We won't get into that. Also, though, too, side note here, there's like a weird, I don't know if it's a trope or what, of Netflix shows and movies where people get like kidnapped and then they get like things put on their head.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I don't even know if I'm explaining that right. Like weird contraptions are put on their head, because this is not one of those. Although it wait, is it? Does she get a weird contraption on her head?
I can't remember.
I'm not sure, but we watched like a few. It was like the OA was one of them. Dark is one of them. I know we saw like a preview for some show or it was like a movie where like the house kills the person because it's like a robot house, and maybe they put them in. I don't know, but that's a weird trope
too. Things on
too.
people's heads.
See,
trope.
We've gone and veered off though. You know, we got off track. We were talking about Barb.
We were, and we should back up a little more, I think, even because Barb is a friend of Nancy, and I don't think we've introduced Nancy yet, but she's Mike's older sister. Yeah, so we like saw her briefly in that scene or in that earlier.
Dustin kind of hit on her for a minute.
Yeah. Unsuccessfully. He tried to offer her pizza. She wasn't into it.
Well, just wait till you get to the final episode of the season. They fall in love. Yeah. I'm just kidding. There's a big age difference here now.
and so while we're on the subject of tropes, I guess, I think this is another one that they do a lot in shows where just for like convenience sake, they will have characters who appear to be in middle school at the same school as characters who appear to be in high school, as though it's like one big school.
Yeah,
just
that's
so they
confusing.
can have like the younger characters in the same place as like their older siblings who are also a part of things. I think that happens a lot.
Boy Meets World, they do it.
Yeah.
I talk about Boy Meets World a lot on the podcast here, and they do. When he goes off to middle school, somehow his older brother Eric, who's in high school, is also there in the same building. But I have worked in schools though where they've got elementary, middle, and high school all in the same building.
I guess it's not unheard of, but it doesn't seem that common in real life, but it seems very common in TV and movies.
Yeah. But Barb and Nancy are talking about, they're talking about boys and things like that. Barb is, not like a pretty popular girl, and it seems like Nancy is sort of on the verge of being maybe a pretty popular girl.
Yeah, it seems like they were maybe both kind of like more studious, bookish kind of girls, but Nancy is starting to attract the attention of one of the cool kids.
One of the cool kids, Steve. Oh, and Barb, by the way, the actress, is in that one show. What is it? Sierra Burgess is a Loser or something like that on Netflix. She's the star of that, which we've not watched, but if you're into Barb, check it out.
And a lot of people are.
People love Barb. And that's in the Netflix movie tropes of girls that we're gonna like say are really unattractive or something like that. The Sierra Burgess movie and then the Dumpling movie. Like that's a little trope there. But you know what? They're all beautiful.
Yeah, they are.
But I think they learned that in the movie too. Yeah, so probably we saw Dumpling.
Barb is wearing large glasses, which are
tells me she's a big
synonymous
nerd
with being ugly in TV and movies. If she's all that,
Side note,
take off
we're
those
talking
glasses, it changes everything.
Well, that's the big twist, and She's All That. But and a side note, M. Night Shyamalan is the writer of She's All That.
Oh,
which
that's
we talked
true.
About.
He wrote it under a pen name.
Yeah. So it all comes together there.
Full circle.
Anyway, though, they're talking about boys, and they're talking about the fact that Steve and Nancy are gonna. Steve actually is he leaves a note or something for Nancy to meet him in the bathroom. They make out. Yeah. And they talk about how they're going to study together later on that night. So, and we'll see all that later. Let's keep going through here though. Next we see the police station, and Hopper is showing up at the police station. People are, kind of, giving him a hard time for being a little bit late. But he says, quote, "Mornings are for coffee and contemplation." And then he repeats that again, coffee and contemplation, which I'll agree with that. I'll tell you what, man. Woo, the other day I had to get up early and go somewhere. We went to our Special Olympics competition actually for that we coached, and I didn't have time to relax and drink my coffee. Anyway, we won some gold medals though. So,
we did.
It's what we do. Yeah. But anyway, he mentions that we see that Joyce though is waiting for him in his office because she got that missing child. That's no good. And I like this scene a lot. I think this scene was kind of cool because it kind of sets the vibe that this is like a small town that people haven't left. They grew up, because it's clear that they have some history. This the way they're talking about, referencing some different people's names and things like that. Yeah, you get a
sense that they probably went to high school together.
Maybe they dated.
Yeah, maybe.
This is I know they are introducing a will they or won't they right here, and I gotta imagine these two get together at some point. I don't know for sure because I don't think they do in the first season. Maybe they do. I don't even remember.
I don't remember either.
But it does feel like...
It seems like they probably will.
Probably will. It does feel like, though, in this first episode, it's setting up a little will they or won't they with them. Yeah, and I like that. Yeah. But Joyce is very concerned about Will. Hopper, not so much. 99% of the time, they're with a parent, and Joyce has an ex-husband, Lonnie, that could be with, or he could have just be, kind of on his own somewhere. Maybe went to school, etc., whatever. But there's a fun part there.
Well, I was just going to say, this unfortunately is a trope in real life where families whose children are missing will go to the police and not be taken seriously and be told that their kids are just runaways, and they'll show up and you can't do anything until they've been missing for like 24 hours or something.
Something like that.
That happens in real life.
But they do have more laws now, though. They've got that one law.
Often leads to disaster.
Right.
Yeah.
But they've got the Amber Alert law thing where we get those notifications on our phone if they put it out.
That's true. Things are getting better, but things still are not great.
Right. But there's a funny line, though, where Joyce says about Will. She says, he's got a couple of friends, but everyone else, they make fun of him, call him names, laugh at him, his clothes. And Hopper goes, his clothes? What's wrong with his clothes? And Joyce goes, I don't know. Does it matter? And Hopper's like, maybe. I thought that was so funny.
Well, that's because it would have reminded me of you. Like, you would say something like that.
Well, look, just if you dress him normal, then buy him normal clothes. It's I don't know.
There's not a normal way to dress. You can dress
That's true.
however you want.
That's true. I think I might have mentioned my large pants I used to wear at middle school at one point on this podcast. So.
Oh, in middle school,
but
I was
people didn't
wearing
make
a lot
fun of
of
me, so
body glitter.
Oh,
and
yeah.
like face glitter.
So that's what it would have looked like if it was set in our middle school time.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
It sounds beautiful, though.
Well, I thought so at the time.
Yeah. Anyway, the next scene, we see Hawkins National Laboratory again. That's where that opening scene was, and we could tell things are not going well. I mean, obviously there was a monster loose at one point, and one of their scientists has probably been killed. But we see people are putting on like big hazmat suit types of things. They're busting out like machine guns and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they point to that there's some kind of opening. It's kind of like all up on the wall. It's all oozing sort of and a little staticky.
This is kind of difficult to describe because it's kind of confusing. It's also confusing when you watch it, but it's, I guess, a little less confusing to see it than to try to explain it.
But they kind of seem like that's an important thing, and they also say that, and the girl's missing too, is what they say. So we don't know what that means. Which is the first time we're hearing
of a girl, other than in that Netflix description.
Right.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that girl. Her name, well, we'll find it out in a minute, but it's 11, Millie Bobby Brown, who plays 11, and a little girl, same age pretty much as the other kids in the show. But she's wearing like a hospital gown looking thing, wandering through the woods.
She has like a buzzed haircut.
Yeah. And she comes across some kind of rural diner.
Also she's has no shoes on.
Okay. Yeah. No shoes. And that's what we see. And then we cut back to the school again. So we're kind of all over the place here. And back at the school, we see the kids. They're in science class. There's the science teacher there. He's got a little mustache. I immediately figured he's probably the culprit that stole this kid because he's got a little mustache and it looks a little shady. But that won't be the case, though. Spoiler, sorry.
Yeah, I think that mustache is a red herring.
I think so. I think it actually is. Yeah. Although this is the only character they introduce as like maybe he did something here.
I think so. Although I mean, we do know that there's a dad who doesn't live with them,
right,
and you know, just based on what we know about kids who go missing, a lot of times a parent is involved. Also, the mom, even though we're seeing a lot of the mom.
You never know. She could be a little unhinged. We don't know what's going on.
She certainly seems kind of unhinged.
Yeah.
But, I mean, she does come across like she cares about her child and is looking for him, but you never know.
You never know.
So those would be the potential suspects in the disappearance that we've got, I guess.
But right now the police are just looking for the kid. They're just looking for the kid. But you were telling me that this line that the teacher says to the class as the bell rings was a little bit of foreshadowing here. He tells them to finish chapter 12 and answer 12.3 on the difference between an experiment and other forms of science investigation.
Oh, yeah, because experimentation is going to be a theme in this show.
Right. Now, this science teacher is also like the head of this ham radio club, which ham radios are like, I don't really know, but you can talk to people from all over the world on these little radios. This in your notes is
the first time I've seen that written out, and I've always wondered what people were saying when they said ham radio. I thought, like, are they saying like
AM radio real fast?
But yeah,
ham radio?
Yeah. I never knew, and I like or like hand radio, like it's handheld.
Well, I think it's ham radio. I didn't look it up, so I'm pretty sure we had a ham radio.
I was trusting you.
I'm pretty sure we had a ham radio club
accurate.
at my high school.
Oh, but
I was not a member of that.
I've never known, and I've been too embarrassed to ask. So
wow.
Yeah. So I've just nodded and been like, yep.
But I think the thing with it is that you can just talk to people all over the world, which, you know, you can do on the internet now. But like I would assume there was some cool thing going on with that. And I'm assuming that's going to come up later on. I don't really remember what happens the rest of the season, but I'm assuming they're going to maybe they're going to talk to Will or something wherever he's at through it, you know?
Yeah, because communication, I remember communication between the characters that we're seeing and characters who are missing.
Oh yeah, they'll come up even in the episode a little bit. Yeah. So anyway, they're all hanging out doing this ham radio stuff, but the police come in and they want to interview the three kids. And they are being interviewed by Hopper, as well as there's another officer in there, Officer Callahan, played by John Reynolds, which the actor John Reynolds, I like that guy a lot.
Me too, and I don't remember him being too notable in Stranger Things.
I don't think he has a couple of funny lines, I think, in the first episode and probably in some others, but yeah, I remember it was like he's on the show Search Party.
Yeah, which premiered after Stranger Things.
And that's like after we watched, I think we might have even watched the whole thing. I like looked him up and I was like, oh, he's also on Stranger Things.
Yeah, I really like him. I feel like Search Party is the only thing I really know him from, but he's a cool actor.
Yeah, he's also on an upcoming Hulu show, which is coming out July 31st, 2019, co-created and co-written by Mindy Kaling, which is a 4 Weddings and a Funeral miniseries.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
That sounds really fun. So anyway, that actor, the guy who plays Officer Callahan, that's who we're talking about there. But the kids are being interviewed by the police. They're being kind of obnoxious and loud and don't really...
just talking over each other.
Yeah, they say the last time they saw Will, he was over on Mirkwood, and they're like, that's not a real street.
Yeah,
and then they finally
But they're
explain,
trying to be helpful.
Right,
They want to find Will.
But they finally explain that's like from The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings. That's just what they call that street.
Yeah.
So those kids are very, into that stuff.
Kids.
Oh my gosh. But anyway, let's go to the next scene here. There's... Will, the missing kid, he had like a fort in the woods probably behind his house, and we see Joyce kind of going up to the fort, and Will is in there.
She has to give him the password in order to get in.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah.
But you can kind of tell as she's going in that this is a different time. She doesn't look quite as disheveled and that sort of thing.
Look like she's just found him.
Yeah, so this is,
or something.
and then you will find out that's not, but it's sort of a fake out kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's like
we think that she's finding him, but no, this is a memory.
Yeah, because then it kind of cuts. It's like it's today and he's not there, and so that's kind of a little emotional scene that we see in there.
Yeah.
But next, we're at the diner again here. And the cook, the main kind of guy at the diner, is trying to figure out what's going on with this girl. She was like trying to steal some food, but then he kind of thinks, maybe she's been, abused or something like that.
Yeah, because at first he's like upset that she was stealing. He actually thinks she's a boy because of her short hair. And is upset that someone's stealing, but then he can tell that something is not quite right with her and is concerned. So this is a good guy. Yeah,
and she has 011 tattooed on her arm, and they eventually figure out that's kind of like her name, 11.
Yeah, she points to that tattoo when he asks for her name, and she's been silent up to this point.
Right.
But he does find out that she can talk, and her name is 11.
Yeah.
She doesn't talk much, but she does say 11.
So the guy, the cook, he calls social services. And after he walks away, too, we see that 11 kind of stares at a fan and uses like psychic powers to make it stop, and it just like stops. So we know she's got some kind of psychic powers or something like that. Or other possibility here, they notice there's a big General Electric logo on that fan on there, and I have a General Electric microwave that just stopped working after like 2 years. So
that's true.
maybe that's what's going on there with your, crappy products, General Electric. So
yeah, but these like the apparent like telekinetic powers that Eleven seems to have based on stopping the fan and some other stuff we're going to see later, it is reminiscent of other Stephen King stuff and stuff from like the 70s, 80s. I think Firestarter is one of those with young Drew Barrymore.
Oh, okay.
Where she had some sort of powers. Also the movie Carrie.
Oh, right.
And the book Carrie. Yeah, so a lot of themes in Stranger Things that are from like those older Stephen King or Steven Spielberg.
Steven, I was trying to think
Steve,
of others.
what's the character Steve in this show?
Oh, Steven.
Nancy's boyfriend.
Do you have him in the Steve Harrington?
Steve Harrington, yep.
Okay.
All your Steves.
All your Steves, yes. Anyway, so yeah. Next, we see another shot of the Hopper searching for Will again, and you know what? They find his bike. That's never good. That's just the bike. I mean, it's good, but it's not good.
He starts to be concerned. Yeah. Hopper, I think he was assuming that nothing bad had happened up until that point.
Yeah, so he arrives. He shows up at Will's house with the bike. He wants to look around the house. One thing he notices is that the dog is barking at the shed. He goes into the shed and he kind of checks it out. It gets an eerie feeling. There's eerie vibes. There's a little bit of light flickering, but he hasn't really. I don't think he really finds anything in there necessarily. He kind of jumps when Officer Callahan comes in to get him, and
he tells Officer Callahan we need to organize a search party.
And he's on top of that because he has been on Search Party.
Yes, the show that we talked about earlier. Yes.
And then we see back at Mike's house. They're at dinner, and Nancy wants to go out. She wants to hang out with Barb, but that's not actually what she wants to do. She wants to hang out with Steve.
Yeah.
She doesn't understand why she can't go out. There's a missing child, Nancy. Why don't you calm down?
Yeah, calm down. Stay inside.
Your brother's friend is a missing person at this very moment. That's crazy, Nancy. Come on. I like though the dad is kind of just like eating his food.
Checked out. He's not too involved in whatever's going on.
Checked out,
but the mom is telling her, no, you can't go out.
Right.
There's a missing child.
After everybody kind of gets up angrily and leaves or whatever, the mom turns to her husband there and says, I hope you're enjoying your chicken, Ted. And he's like, what did I do? What did I do? And I love it. That's just typical man not knowing what's going on. It does feel like it. Yes, it felt very relatable.
Yeah. The mom, by the way, Mike's mom is she was one of Don Draper's girlfriends on Mad Men, I believe. That actress was.
Yes. Should we just, because that happened last week when we talked about Dead to Me too, with Linda Cardellini.
Oh yeah. We can just assume from now on that actors from every show will have at one point hooked up with Don Draper.
Whoa, that'll be interesting when we get to next week. We'll talk about next week's episode here in a minute. But anyway, next we see the search party actually happening, and the teacher is talking to the teacher from the school is talking to Hopper at one point during this search party thing, and Hopper's talking about his own daughter. They're just talking about how the teacher's a science teacher, etc., whatever. But after they walk away, someone tells the teacher that Hopper's kid is actually dead. The kid is not alive anymore. And
he had lied about her.
Yeah,
living with her mom somewhere.
Right, yeah. So there's, we're seeing a lot of different things going on with the different characters, which I think is cool. We're really doing a lot in this first step. There's a lot happening in this first episode. Yeah,
and you had brought up earlier how there was that child's drawing in Hopper's place, but there was no family there.
Oh, man. That's sad. That's probably why his house is a wreck.
Sad.
He's got...
that's probably why he's drinking so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's probably why he will be so dedicated to finding Will.
Oh yeah,
throughout.
I think so.
Yeah, I know he was like slow to start worrying about him in this episode, but eventually he'll be very dedicated to this.
Right. Next part, we see Mike and Lucas talking on some walkie-talkies. They decide they want to meet up because they want to go look for Will themselves. They mention how in their Dungeons and Dragons game, the night that Will went missing, he cast some kind of spell that was some kind of attack spell instead of a protection spell or something like that, meaning that he would fight. He would put himself on the line.
Daring.
Yeah. So they think wherever he's at, he's fighting. He needs us. Yeah. And so they're gonna go off and look for him. They're all riding their bikes. You know, but then we see back.
I assume they snuck out of the house.
Oh yeah, they did sneak out, I think. And Steve actually was sneaking into the house as they were sneaking out. Because since Nancy couldn't head out, climbing in through the window, like the dude from Clarissa Explains It All.
Sam.
Sam. Well, not exactly like that though. I don't think Sam was after anything romantic with Clarissa.
I don't think so.
Anyways, the next shot we see the diner again, and a woman shows up. She says she's from social services, of course.
Who he had called earlier. The diner guy.
Right. And then, of course, this woman then shoots the diner guy in the head because she is not from social services.
Yeah, and earlier, I think we didn't mention, but it had kind of seemed like at that lab, people were intercepting calls.
Yeah.
They were able to like somehow listen in on calls that were going on around town.
Right, because right before the guy gets shot, he says like, your voice sounded different on the phone.
So, and then she shoots him.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, 11 is like back in the kitchen, and
she's like cornered by like a couple of agents or whatever, and they're pointing guns at her, and then we don't see what happens, but we kind of hear what happens, and somehow I'm assuming she used her psychic powers to get those guys to shoot themselves in the head or something like that.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah,
that's intense.
And she has disappeared. That woman, the woman who shot the guy, can't find her.
Intense. A lot of headshots in this episode, but not a lot of blood or anything. So just to throw that out there, if you're like, should I watch this episode with my kids, family, whatever? It's pretty intense, but it's not like people's heads aren't blown
graphic,
up. Yeah.
Which is good for me because I can't handle that very well.
Right. Now that shot right there, you were talking about the music in that shot. It's kind of a fun vibe there.
It's like intense. It's the song that's playing is White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane. If you're not familiar with that song, it's like kind of a classic oldie, but the song uses imagery from Alice in Wonderland, the white rabbit and whatnot, which is interesting because Alice in Wonderland is this story about a girl who like goes to a strange world, and that is similar to some things that may or may not be going on in Stranger Things, but also even though the song is using the Alice in Wonderland imagery, what the song is actually about is experimenting with drugs to enhance your mental capacity, and kind of expand your mind, and again, experimentation is another theme in this show. So I think this was a very strategic music choice.
I like it. Also, it's very exciting. It feels like you're watching like a Scorsese kind of movie at that moment, because the music's all like cool, fun oldies, really cool but there's like violence going on.
Yeah, that scene kind of reminded me of if you've ever seen The Americans. There's that one scene in The Americans, I don't know if you remember, Mike, but it's like a very intense scene, and the music playing is I think it's called The Chain by Fleetwood Mac, but it like really builds up in a really cool way in that scene, and that just kind of reminded me of this one here.
Dude, The Americans, also set in the 1980s. Oh man,
oh yeah, it is.
I love it.
We'll have to get to that show.
We will. That's
so cool.
10 times
also
more
confusing.
Complex what's going on here.
Yeah.
So.
Not sci-fi, but confusing.
Yeah. But let's get to we see a little bit with Steve and Nancy, and there's some stuff going on with them. We'll see Steve. I feel like he doesn't seem like a great dude here in this episode.
He seems a little date rapey, but
a little bit, but
we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I did see him in the season 3 trailer that we watched, so he must not be that much of a jerk.
Yeah,
but he does come across as kind of a jerk, and maybe like pressuring Nancy a little bit.
Yeah,
but also I think Nancy is a little bit excited to be getting this attention from Steve, and but I think Barb had said like if she ends up like becoming Steve's girlfriend, she'll be like way more popular. And Barb is actually kind of scared that Nancy won't want to be friends with her anymore. So that's what's going on. That's kind of tangential to the main plot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we got just a couple more scenes here. We got at Will Byers' house, there's a phone call. Joyce has mentioned that she feels like Will is close by, and on that phone call, there's like static and some crackling and some breathing and then some growling also. And she says that
creepy.
she thought that was Will. She doesn't hear him say anything, but she felt like that was Will.
She says she heard him breathing.
Right.
She says that to the brother.
Yeah. And then the last scene, we see the boys, Dustin, Lucas, and Mike in the woods, and they encounter 11. And that's the final shot there of that pilot episode.
Do we see her nose bleeding at all?
No.
Because I know that's like
a thing. That comes up later on, though.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the end of the episode. And that's, what do we think about that pilot?
Okay, so here's the thing. When we first watched the pilot,
right,
and we binge watched the whole show, I loved it. I was like instantly drawn in. It was really cool.
Yeah.
It was really interesting and exciting, and I really enjoyed the whole experience of watching the pilot and watching the whole first season. But I feel like there's not a lot of rewatch value in this show, because honestly, rewatching this for the podcast felt like a chore. Like, I was not excited about it. I think because I already knew what was going to happen, and it, like, wondering what was going to happen was like the thing that made it exciting to begin with.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because like a lot of the pilots that we've done so far on the podcast were like sitcoms, like Parks and Rec, which are like, I think I could watch Parks and Rec a million times. I probably have that pilot, and it's as funny as when I watched it the first time. Because you're there for the jokes, you're there for the relationships between the characters, but with Stranger Things, you're there for the plot. So once you know the plot, it's
tough. I think
exciting.
I think usually a lot of these shows we've been rewatching to do this podcast, I've liked the show even more upon rewatching it. But yeah, I feel like this one, I mean, it's something I could see if we rewatched it right before a season, I guess. I could see doing that. I could see throwing it on, but then sometimes I might be confused about what's exactly happening. I don't know. Maybe it's the kind of thing we should have thrown on around like October, like, because it has that Halloween vibe to it.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, no, I feel like, the other thing with it too, and this is kind of how my taste is with everything though. So, but like when we watched this when it first came out, and it's not like we're like, oh yes, of course I saw that the weekend it came out. But like after it came out, like it was such a huge phenomenon that it was just like you would walk by Hot Topic at the mall and it would be all Stranger Things, and it'd be like, why would I buy a t-shirt of this?
Yeah, it was like, we watched it and I was like, well, I liked that, but I'm not like obsessed with it now. But like, it was kind of like the world became obsessed with it, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of off-putting.
I guess I didn't when we watched it, I didn't think of it as a sci-fi kind of show that would create like a fandom to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, because
I also kind of thought it was going to be a one and done, one season and done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just, it's a cool show if you haven't watched it. But
yeah.
And I guess if the second season's out, I could see if all the seasons had been out, we would have been like, yeah, let's keep watching. Let's see because that's what we did with like Mad Men, and I'm sure if you watched Mad Men in real time, you might have been like, oh, I don't know. He just slept with that woman. Now he's sleeping with this woman.
It's very bingeable.
Yeah.
Stranger Things is very bingeable. If you've never watched it, I would say definitely watch it. It was fun to watch. But if you have watched it and you're wondering if maybe I should go and rewatch this, my opinion is no, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much the second time
I'll say that I watched the trailer. There's like a couple trailers for the third season, and the one trailer where they're playing that Bobo O'Reilly song, I think, in it, and it's like almost made me want to watch the second season just to see the third season, because it was hyping me up.
You probably, if you are going to watch this, you'll probably want to binge all the seasons.
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a better way than like watching the first season and then waiting 2 years for the next season to come out.
Oh my gosh. You know what? Speaking of shows that I could just binge all the way through, because why not? Let's talk about what we're going to cover next week.
I'm so excited.
Next week,
so excited.
Gia, we've been trying to pick, sometimes we're just picking, old favorites. Sometimes we're picking things that might be sort of timely because they have a new season coming out or something like that. And this is one that Gia has wanted to do this whole time. It's a little departure from some of the scripted types of shows that we've been doing.
Reality show.
Yeah,
that we've done so far. It's also more lighthearted than the shows we've done in the past few weeks.
It is much more lighthearted. We're gonna have a good time. So, Gia, you want to tell them what it is?
Guys, we're doing Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
Oh my gosh!
If you haven't been keeping up, you better catch up now. There's, I think, 16 seasons. I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I think as we're recording this right now on Sunday night, they are wrapping up the 16th season.
So we're going to be covering
a lot of work to do.
The very first episode.
Before our next episode.
Oh my gosh, of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, which is on Hulu.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you've never watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians, just know that the first season and the first episode is, it was almost like they would try to put a sitcom-y kind of plot in their reality show. It wasn't just like, here's what Kim Kardashian is up to now. It was like, here's this family.
It wasn't just like super duper rich people like sitting around on their phones and posing for Instagram photos.
It felt like it was almost some kind of a little bit of a spoof of old sitcoms.
Yes.
So it's actually kind of fun in that way. So
and I love it.
Yeah.
I am attached to that family and to those characters. I really am.
I'm not so much. But it'll be fun. So hey, thanks for listening, guys. That's exciting. I'm glad you're here listening. It's a fun time, and we have fun talking about these shows. So hey, if you could, if you like it, subscribe, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That would be just awesome. You can follow us on Facebook at YouMeAndTV, on Twitter at YouMeAndTVPod, on Instagram at YouMeAndTV Podcast, or if you want to, you can email us at YouMeAndTVPodcast@gmail.com. And I think that's all we got for this week, right?
Yeah.
Bye.